we got here? Hey, it's your boy Justin, J.Varizzle Fisher, doing a little follow-up video to the buck down video. So if you haven't watched the buck down video, you should probably pause this, go back, watch the buck down video, and then turn around and watch this one, right? So if you don't know, I harvested my first buck ever this past fall. So been hunting since I was 15 years old, and I've taken does and I've gotten some shots on a couple bucks in the past, but I've never been able to actually harvest one. So I got my opportunity, and you'll see that in the buck down video if you haven't watched it yet. Took my first buck, and it is not a trophy buck by any means. You know, it's not a wall hanger. I'm not going to be doing a full chest head mount on it or anything like that. So the next best thing that I thought to do, because I want to commemorate, you know, my first buck, is doing kind of a Euro mount on it. Just skull and antlers, you know. There's a couple different ways to do that, and you know, you can do the boil method where, you know, you boil the flesh off and then it comes out all pristine white, and I didn't want to do that. That's not really, one, I didn't have the time or the equipment to do that. A friend of mine turned me on to what's called maceration, so that's the method that I chose. Behind me, covered up by some fence here, is where I buried my buck skull, and I just buried it to the base of the antlers, you know. And I buried this back in November, and it is now March 10th. So, you know, it's been, you know, a good solid 4 months or so, 5 months or so. I've been told that here in the South, you know, southeastern North Carolina, you can probably just bury it for like 2.5, 3 months tops, and you're good. But what we do is, by burying it, and we did this in the wintertime, so I had to take that into account too. I wanted to let it sit a little bit longer. By burying it, we let the bugs and the worms do the work for us as far as fleshing it, right? Fleshing it, taking care of all the skin, the hair, the muscle, the ligament, everything that's in there, the brain, all that gets taken care of by the bugs and the worms, and we don't have to worry about scooping it out and doing the whole boil process and all that good stuff. Really didn't want to do all that. So I'm ready to dig it up, and we're gonna see how this thing turned out. I heard, and I've seen videos, that it's gonna end up, you know, having a little bit of a dirt stain to it. You know, it's not gonna be pristine white, and I don't care about that. You know, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build a wood background, just using some 1x, and stain it, you know, like a walnut stain, and then I'll mount whatever comes out. And I've actually saved the 308 cartridge that I used to take the buck, and I'm gonna mount that on it as well. Just a little commemorative piece, you know, for some sentimental value on my first buck ever. But what I did, I just buried it in the corner of my backyard back in November, and I did all the work myself as far as, you know, processing the buck. I actually took 2 deer this year, a buck and a doe, and I processed both of them myself completely, ground the meat, everything. And it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding when you're able to do this stuff yourself and not have to pay somebody to do it for you. If you see behind me, because I do have a dog, I had to cover this so he didn't end up coming around and digging this thing up way too early. I just used some old fencing that I have, and I just simply covered it with the fencing so the dog couldn't get to it. So we're gonna defence, dig it up, and see what this thing looks like. All right, fence has been removed, and you can kind of see the dirt that's just been sitting there on top, and I'll get to uncovering here in a second. And might have should have marked this thing a little bit better, but because I don't see the antlers sticking up. But I know it's right there, so I'll get to uncovering and see what this thing looks like. We found it. So there's the antlers. One side, there's the other one, and I can start to see the skull, and I'm just using my hand to dig this out so I don't put any additional pressure on it. Looks like there's still a little bit of hair in there. We'll see how this thing turned out. I might need to let it sit a little longer, but we'll find out. All right, so we got it up, and you can see that it's not quite ready yet. There's still some hair, a little bit of skin, and down in here you got some tongue matter still left. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bury it not as deep, because I don't have to worry about the dog anymore. I'm actually in the process of moving, and the dog's already at the new house. So I'm going to bury it not as deep, and now that the weather's getting warmer, I'm going to give it a little more time, and we'll come back and pull it and finish her up. All right, y'all. It's April 13th now, and I'm gonna check on this deer head again and just see how much more progress we've made, and if it's completely done, then I'll go ahead and wash it up and we'll see what we got. Alright, I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's mostly done. It's got a little bit left to go, but we might be able to just clean it up at this point and see where we're at. And if we need to rebury it, we will, but I'm going to go ahead and take it and I'm going to wash it off and scrape it out a little bit and just see where we're at with it. But you can get the general idea. All you got to do is bury the deer head and let nature do what nature does. Let the bugs and the worms take care of the skin and the decomposition. And the bottom jaw did fall off, which is expected. We knew that was going to happen. So all in all, it's not looking too bad, and there's no smell whatsoever. I don't smell anything funky or foul about it, but I'm gonna go clean her up and we'll see what she looks like when I get her cleaned up, and if we need to rebury it, we will. Alright, so that's what it's looking like right now. Most of that stuff came off of it. I'm just going to rebury that and let it decompose. I'll probably clean the bottom jaw up too. I don't know what I'll do with that yet, but I'm just going to hit this thing with a water hose and see if that's going to take off everything I need it to, or if I need to scrub it a little bit. This is all a learning process. This is the first time that I've ever done this, and I know there's a lot of people out there that they're wondering, you know, can I do this, or how hard is it to do it? So far it's not been hard. You just bury the thing and let it sit long enough for nature to do its thing. But I'll spray it down and we'll see how it cleans up. Alright, I got this thing kind of out in the sun, just kind of drying out now. Put it out on the driveway, and I hope you guys can see the different color pattern on this thing. I love the coloration that this gets when you put it in the ground like that. You know, it's not your pristine bright white Euro mount, but it's got character, and I hope you guys are seeing this. And, you know, obviously, like I said, it's not a trophy buck, you know, and I'm not gonna mount it on the wall. So the next best thing I had was maybe do a Euro mount on it, but I wanted to do it all myself, And I'll zoom in here and you can kind of see that that's just from a garden hose. Like that's not even scraping or scrubbing or anything like that. That is just simply using a garden hose to spray it off. And there's still maybe a little pieces of meat that are on the skull, but it's nothing that just a scrub sponge won't get off. You know, the sponge with a rough edge on it, or you know, maybe even I could do it with a washcloth. I mean, it's not hanging on by much, and it's just in a few little cracks and crevices. All the brain is gone, all the soft tissue, the hair, everything's done, and all it took was just spraying it off with a water hose. I might have to wipe it down a little bit, and now I'm trying to decide if I'm gonna throw like a urethane on it to preserve it, which I probably will, and build like a little wooden plaque or a little wooden mount for it. But you guys can see that she came out pretty good just by burying it in the ground. We'll follow up with this in a little while. All right, so we're back to our deer skull project, our DIY Euro mount, where we're using maceration. And in the previous videos you saw where I buried the deer skull from the buck down video, the buck that I shot there, let it sit for months, and then, you know, I pulled it up once and it wasn't ready yet, so I put it back down. Realized that I had it buried too deep, so I put it a little bit higher. Worked perfectly. Let it sit for another couple of months. Everything looked good. It came out with that stained kind of tint to it, which is what I wanted. You know, you can do this by boiling in a pot, and you know, you can bleach it, you can do all that stuff, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted a simple project where I buried the deer skull, let nature do its thing, let the bugs do their thing, and get the flesh away. And you come out with a little bit of tint to it. Now, what I've got it in right now, it's kind of the final phase. You know, it's been sitting in the garage for a little while, and I just haven't gotten around to finishing it. So I've been looking at it, and I'm like, I really want to finish that skull. So, got it soaking right now in just some Blue Dawn and water, just to finish it up. There's a little areas that I need to touch up. I'm gonna take my little toothbrush here, do a little bit of scrubbing just on the small areas that I need to clean up. It's still gonna maintain that tint that it has, that brown tinge that I like so much. And then, in the meantime, what I've been working on is my mounting plate. So, you know, I'll put a picture of the process of that in there, where I was just taking these 1x2s and cut slats, stained them up with walnut stain, put them together, really simple. And then right there I mounted the bullet, or the shell casing from the bullet that actually took the deer down. So that's where we're at right now. I'm gonna give this sucker a little bit of a scrub, a little bit of a toothbrush TLC, and then when we're done with this, I'm gonna let her dry it up, and then spray it down with some polyurethane, and it should be ready to mount at that point. Deer skull maceration, DIY Euro mount. Alright, so we're moving on to our next step. Let the skull dry overnight after we finish cleaning it with the Blue Dawn. And so now I'm just going to put a little clear coat on it. So just got your standard semi-gloss clear. It's a Rust-Oleum spray rattle can, something I had left over. Just going to put a couple coats on her and see how it turns out. I think the hard part's done. really know if I'm supposed to coat the antlers or not, but I'm going to. My mount. Try not to overspray. Put a little bit of a coating on it. Now, a buddy of mine does this quite often. He does all different forms of maceration and mounts for deer and pig and all kinds of other stuff. And originally, when I did the in the ground maceration, it leaves the nasal cavity in it. And I told him what I was doing, and he told me to go ahead and just take some 4-steps and just pull that out, because if you don't, it's going to end up disintegrating and falling out on your floor anyway. I've heard both versions. I've heard, the reason you do a maceration is so you get everything you can and leave the nasal membrane in there. And I don't know which one's the best or not, but I mean, I take the advice of my friend because he's been doing it for years and he knows better than most. So he said take the nasal cavity out. I took it out, and again, it's my mount, so I'll do what I want with it. We're gonna let this dry, hit it with another coat, and then we'll start working on the mounting process. Alright, so this is our finished product. We've got them all mounted up now, and you can see how it turned out. You can hopefully see the different color pattern in it. So this was a DIY deer skull maceration. Buried it, let it sit, let nature do its thing. Built our own mount for it, cleaned it up. We left that brown, some of that brown stain, some of that tinge in there. Give it a certain character. I didn't want it bright white. I've said that a couple times, but just show you, how it turned out and how easy it is to do this yourself. We've got the shell casing from the 308 that took the deer down, and if you go back and watch the buck down video, you'll see exactly how we took this buck and how we harvested it. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. I mean, it was a lengthy process as we went through the whole thing, having to let it sit in the ground for months, but really I didn't have to do a whole lot of work. It's just bury it, let it sit, and then get it cleaned up and make sure all the flesh is off of it. And I mean, they call this thing a Euro mount, but I'm liking it more as calling it a frontier mount. That's kind of how I see it, and it looks like it would be a mount somewhere back in the frontier days. So I don't know if that phrase is coined yet, but if not, I'm going to coin it for myself. Here it is, the Euro mount, or as I like to call it, the frontier mount. Thanks for watching.